And now, please give a welcome to Helen Scirillo, Executive Director of Braided River, to introduce Lynda and tonight's program. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight in person and virtually. I'm Helen Scirillo. I'm the Executive Director of Braided River, and I want to give a warm thank you to Town Hall for inviting us to partner on this event tonight with Lynda Mapes. I also want to thank For Culture for their support and to Elliott Bay Books for offering Lynda Mapes books tonight. I want to acknowledge the partners that we have tabling, the Alaska Wilderness League, longtime partners, and Orca Nexus. So for 40 years, Lynda Mapes was a full-time daily newspaper reporter on 4 newspapers on both sides of the country. She was at the Seattle Times for 27 years before leaving last year to focus on writing books and long-form journalism. Lynda specializes in coverage of the environment, natural history, and Native American tribes. She has twice been part of reporting teams at the Seattle Times that won the Kavli Gold Award for science journalism for her groundbreaking reporting on the historic Elwha Dam removal, and for her reporting on Tahlequah and the extinction crisis facing southern resident orcas. She was named a finalist for a team award for the Pulitzer Prize for local reporting for an investigative series revealing how the Washington state government spent $1 million per day on construction that failed to safeguard neither the salmon nor the tribal treaty rights it was meant to protect. Lynda is the author of 7 books. While I was the publisher of Mountaineers at Mountaineers Books, Elwha, A River Reborn, was published, and then we partnered with the Burke Museum on an exhibit that was based on the book. Braided River published Orca, Shared Water, Shared Home, in partnership with the Seattle Times, for which Lynda received both the Washington State Book Award and the National Outdoor Book Award. Her most recent book with the University of Washington Press is The Trees Are Speaking, Dispatches from the Salmon Forests. She also serves on the Northwest Science Writers Association. I first met Lynda more than 20 years ago when she reported on a book we published at Mountaineers Books with Shubhankar Banerjee on the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, and the impact the book had on shutting down a Senate bill to drill in this remarkable place. This surreal experience of the power of images and a book turned out to be the seeds for what became now the organization that I lead, Braided River. It also provided the seeds of a longtime friendship with Lynda. So tonight is a bit of a full circle experience for me as we explore the life and lands of America's Arctic through Lynda's recent expeditions and reporting. Her work is supported through the generosity of donors who contribute to the Braided River Overlooked and Untold Alaska Journalism Fund, and we have a lot of untold stories to tell. Lynda has said, "I'm a writer embedded in the wonder of nature. Nature is my mentor, teaching ways of knowing, adapting, and thriving. Nature is where I look for the work that needs to be done and the truths that need to be told." So before Lynda joins us, we're going to show a short video to kind of get you in the mood, and then Lynda will join and talk.
Good evening, Seattle. It is so wonderful to see so many friends in the audience tonight. Thank you for turning out. Gosh, everybody's here. My Pea Patch crowd, my Writer Posse crowd. Everybody came. I want to give a special shout out to my husband, Doug McDonald, who thought I was retiring a year ago. Well, this is what happened instead. So I can't start without just giving a shout out of deep love for Helen and the work that she does. I'm just a small part of this community of writers and photographers that she's been assembling around her vision now for 20, 25 years. And it's beautiful, the work she's bringing into the world. So let's give it up for Helen, please. I also really want to thank Elliott Bay Books. Writers can't do our thing if bookstores don't do their thing. And the way they turn out for these local events is just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's so supportive for local authors. They bring in the big stars too, but it means so much to those of us who are writing here in the community to have them support us. So thank you very much. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we're going to do tonight. I have been on multiple expeditions up to the Arctic, above the Arctic Circle, and I'm going right back, actually, in about a week, and then again later in the year. Why is this happening? It's happening because this is a very, very, very urgent time for this precious place. So I want to explain to you why each one of you is actually deeply connected to this place. It may seem remote, far away. What does it have to do with me? This is America's Arctic. A lot of people don't even know that we have an Arctic, but we do in Alaska. And you know what? Almost all of it is yours. It is public land, and most of it is still astonishingly intact. That is the point. That's why we're here tonight, because during the first Trump administration, one of the first things he called for was drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. The Biden administration squished a lot of what was hoped for during the first Trump administration, and now here we are back for Trump 2. And this is a very urgent time for America's Arctic, because right now, as we sit here, there are leases, oil drilling leases, that have been placed over the entire Western Arctic, a place that, it was called a petroleum reserve and set aside as a petroleum reserve back in the 20s for the Navy, and yet still remained relatively untouched. But right now, as we sit here, there are leases over a lot of that land. Leasing is not drilling. Leasing is a wish by industry to change this place massively into an oil patch. That's why it's so important that you're here tonight to also talk about the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, which you see over to the right side of this screen. Altogether, we're talking about 42 million acres of public land, most of it still intact. And it is a vast nursery for species, a precious place for the native people who have always, always relied on this place for subsistence and the heart of their culture. So what I want to do now, after this orientation of where we're talking about, is take you on the road with me, show you some of the journey that I've been on, this learning journey about this special place, what it is, what it means, why it matters. So I had never been to the Arctic before until last summer, and it's a very hard place to get to, and the first thing you have to do to get there is get in a plane that would actually fit on this stage. It's super small, and so you fly to Fairbanks, that's fine, that's commercial, and then you fly to Kotzebue, and then you get a cab to a hangar where you meet your plane, and your pilot, it's a 3-seater plane. You, the guide who has a gun, and the pilot. And the next thing the pilot does is fill the wings with gas. And you think to yourself, oh, small plane, wings full of gas. But in life, and I know you've all had moments like this, you sometimes have to decide now or never, and I chose now. So up we went, and this is some of what I started to immediately see out the window of the plane. It's shocking, frankly, to see a landscape like this, that for 2 hours unspools, unwrecked, beautiful, intact, as it has always been. We are so used to seeing rivers that have been diked, that have been dammed, that have been simplified. To see these rivers running down the mountains like this, so completely wild and free, this moved me deeply. We were flying very low because it was actually quite windy. That was comforting to me to fly low. I learned later, oh, that's much worse because you have a lot less time to deal if something goes wrong. To me, it was like, oh, it's kind of like being in a boat. It's fine. But to be so low means you get to see the texture of the tundra, and those lines are caribou tracks, worn intergenerationally as they're traveling the paths of their ancestors. And what that told me before I even got off the plane, that we hear about this as being a place, well, there's nothing there. It's a great white emptiness. There's nothing there. This place has its own life story and sovereignty. The land has a memory of these animals. The animals have a memory of this land. And you see it there, written in the tundra. And so the other thing that struck me as we came closer to our destination, which was the Pic Dunes, near the Teshepuk Lake special area, there's so much water, so much water. As we came even closer, I began to see what looked like broken pieces of mirror scattered over the ground. And it was just so many ponds and rills and streams and rivers and lakes. And then this, which looks like alligator skin, doesn't it? But actually, this is what happens to the tundra when it repeatedly freezes and thaws. It forms these polygons. And so I'm in this otherworldly place. And then suddenly we're there. And the pilot unceremoniously dumps our stuff and starts filling the wings with gas again. Gets on the stepladder, getting ready to go back to Kotzebue, and leaves us there. So I basically dropped out of the sky to go work with photographer Garrett Vinn, and there we are. And I'm thinking to myself, I've really done it this time. So Garrett Vinn is a magnificent photographer. He specializes in birds. He's worked for nearly 20 years for the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and I had written to him about 2 months earlier and said, Garrett, I really want to come up there. Do you think I could just come join you while you're doing your field work? Because he'd already been up there all summer, perfect person to team up with. And he graciously said yes. And so he was already up there with his guide, and I just told the pilot, there are the tents. There. And so that little red and blue number, that was mine. And as you can see, it really is a vast and very open space. But we made it cozy, and it was the third week of August. And so you have this golden maple syrup light, and it's lasting until 11:30 or so. And the reason for the really big smile on my face is the surprise that the guide that I was traveling with put in our plane, despite the weight limit, the camp chair. Oh, I was so grateful for the camp chair. There was no log to lean on. There was no tree to lean on, but I had my camp chair. We were not alone. There were animals everywhere. These guys were right in the bluff behind our tents, and they constantly checked on us and talked to us. We instantly went out and started hiking. As soon as I got there, I threw our stuff on the ground, and Garrett said the perfect thing, let's get out there. And what did we see? We saw the tracks of grizzly bear. We saw the beautiful, delicate 5-toed track of the wolverine. Wolf tracks, of course. But even the grass had things to say to us. This restless wind moves the grass, and it starts to make these sundial shapes. Everywhere, caribou tracks. It had rained just the night before, and so it was a perfect surface to take their print and hold it. Look how many. You had a sense of being amid what my friend Lynda Mapes calls a vast intelligence of animal lives. So we went out and explored the Pic Dunes. Now, this is a very unusual land formation in the Arctic. It's basically formed by sediments coming from Teshepuk Lake. It is a polar desert, and it was, as you can see, we had sand dunes everywhere, and yet there was so much life. One of the things we very quickly encountered was a whole den of foxes, a whole family. And Garrett instantly went into his super photographer mode, wanting to observe everything that these foxes were doing. And honestly, I had a great sense of privilege to be able to see them in their day-to-day life. Of course, we explored the tundra. By the way, Garrett is 6'7", and he's forever collapsing this giant frame onto the ground to get pictures, in this case of cotton grass, which was growing and flowering everywhere. It looked like there had been a little bit of a snowstorm. So many lakes, as you saw from the view from the plane, the lakes, ponds everywhere. And at one point, Garrett said, "I want to show you something." And so he took me to a pond where he had been just the night before, and he said, "Don't you kind of want to be here by yourself for a while? You know, not me, no guides, nobody around, just go be." And I looked around at this incredible landscape that's already starting to turn color because fall's coming. Even the tiniest detail of it is so beautiful. Here you see this bare berry changing color. And you see the little hole there where something's living. You have this sense of life around you just everywhere, and a great sense of history, that animal lives that have been, they've been utilizing this place for so long. And so I said, yes, I definitely want to spend some time here alone. So we went to the pond that he'd staked out to show me this family of red-throated loons. Now, I watched very carefully as he disappeared over the hill to pay attention, camp is that way. And he's a tall guy, so I could see him for a long way receding. And then I lay down on the soft tundra and just listened. And to be in a place that quiet, where all you're hearing is the quiet little peeps of the chicks and the wind. And eventually, the father loon comes, and he's got a silvery fish that he's brought for the chicks. And he holds it out to one of them, and it drops it. And I thought to myself, you have to work so hard to bring up your chicks in a place like the Arctic. And that sense of being alone with this loon family, to watch them do the thing that they must do here, which is persist into another generation. This is the place where they can fatten up, where these chicks can get ready to fly. Are you ready? All the way to the coast of China, where they're going to live in a very industrial environment. So being able to come here, a healthy place, a quiet place, a safe place where they can grow and get ready to fly, this is what they need. These iconic species that we all love, this yellow-billed loon, this dagger-like bill, huge wingspan. We heard them every night. The thing about this place is, because of all that water, it is a sanctuary for birds. 200 species of birds, millions of birds, birds going to 6 continents. Those birds that we see in our yard that we think of as being our birds, this is where they're from. No matter where they're going after they leave here, this is where they're from. Look at this red knot. It was tagged in Grays Harbor County. Imagine, it flew thousands of miles to breed in the Western Arctic, as all of these birds do every single year. So even though this seems like such a distant place, we're intimately connected to it by these miraculous lives, all these birds. So many birds. Waterfowl, shorebirds. These are pictures that Garrett made during the summer before I got there, and I just wanted to show them because they're so special. These tiny little chicks that are so perfectly camouflaged. The songs, the place is just alive with bird song during the peak breeding season. And I love the little philosopher king of this chick. What a face. And the sense of the wildness of these animals, their ability to persist, to thrive, to do what they need to do. the glowering snowy owl. Every now and then we get an eruption and we get to see them here, but this is where they go. This is where they thrive. And the caribou. So the Western Arctic is home to the Western Arctic caribou herd. It is the largest in the Arctic. It's the largest in Alaska. It is still healthy. What is so moving about the Western Arctic is because it is so big, it is home to these massive migrations of animals. We no longer have the great herds of the bison, but this still goes on up in the Western Arctic. Hundreds of thousands of these animals travel hundreds of miles from the interior to get to the coast, to get away from the mosquitoes, and they travel just after giving birth with their babies, crossing these rivers. What bravery, what strength, and the little ones make these little grunting sounds, earnestly keeping up with their mom. And their strength, their persistence, and their use of this land, generation after generation, they're being pursued close behind by the wolves and the bears. So it's hard enough for them without us threatening their space. Each night when I would go to sleep in my tent and I would hear the loons call and I would watch the twilight finally start to come around 11:30, midnight, I would lie awake and I would think to myself, this place that seems so rugged and so powerful and these animals so strong and so resilient, it's actually still very fragile. And sure enough, as we left, a couple days later, and our plane goes up, and I'd been in this place that seemed so unto itself, so far from everything. Just 5 miles away was this. You can see the oil development coming. 5 miles away, this is the Willow development, and it's just now really getting going, and it'll be in full production in a couple of years. And once this gets started, once there's some infrastructure there, it is so easy for industry to come and do more. And so this is there now, and that has made it easy for this to happen. So last summer, in the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, Trump got Congress to bake in 5 lease sales in the Western Arctic over the next 10 years. One of them has already happened. It happened in March, and major oil companies, the big ones, Exxon, Shell, they showed a real interest. They really showed up, and they plastered a lot of this landscape with leases, even in protected places like the Teshepuk Lake area, the very place that I had been. Now, there was an agreement that was negotiated with the Nuiqsik tribal community, guaranteeing them that even if this Willow development was going to happen, they were going to have a right-of-way where they would protect. They would take care of the land because they need those caribou at the heart of their subsistence. And when the Trump administration came in, they just knocked all that over. We are living in a time when everything's for sale. Nothing is sacred. The rule of law, regulations, forget it. It's just going over the side. But you know what? Leasing is not drilling. And that is where you come in. There is tremendous native resistance to this development in the Western Arctic. This is Rosemary Atungarik. She lives in Nuiqsik. She's a public health nurse, and she has founded an organization called Grandmothers Growing Goodness. You have to love that. And her stance is one of absolute resistance to this oil development. Her NGO has filed suit against this oil development, along with some of the largest environmental organizations in our country, and they're determined to stop this. Rosemary, as I said, is a public health nurse. She was trained in Seattle. She got her degree from the University of Washington. She has an honorary degree from my alma mater, Oberlin College. And so, she has witnessed over the time of her life more and more people in her village becoming sickened with respiratory illnesses as the fossil fuel industry comes closer and closer and closer to their village. And there are releases of toxic gases. So she's been radicalized by this, and she is fighting back. This is a time of witness. It is a time for the work of witness. Garrett Vinn is out there right now taking more pictures, and I can't wait to see him bring them into the world. And this work of witness is also your work. And it's mine. I wrote this story, which was a cover story in the Seattle Times Magazine. It came out last September. I was thrilled to bring what I had seen to the world. And I'm not done. So the next project that I undertook with Helen and her community that supported it is this project. So the Ambler Road, if you haven't heard about this scheme, this caper, this plan by a bunch of billionaires to basically blow up Alaska, this is something you really need to know about. So Amy Gulick, another fantastic photographer who's part of Helen's orbit, she's published several beautiful books you probably know. Salmon in the Trees, The Salmon Way. She knows Alaska. She's worked up in Alaska a lot, and she and I teamed up on this story. The idea was to get up there and see the places that would be impacted by this road. Now, the only way to do that, the best way to do it, was in winter. You can go anywhere in Alaska in the winter, it's frozen solid. So, you travel by bush plane, you travel by dog sled, by snowmobile, and that's just what we did in minus 24 temperatures. But it was 20 on the warm days. Here's why we went. You see the right-of-way drawn there in yellow on this map. So the plan, this idea has been around since the first Trump administration. The Biden administration squashed it, and now it's back, is to build a 211-mile industrial haul road through the Brooks Range, some of the wildest, most spectacular country in America's Arctic, even through the gates of the Arctic National Park. And, this is not just a road. The idea for this road is to open up this whole area, this whole new mining district, basically build America's next Rust Belt, all for foreign mining corporations. So, and it's even crazier than that, because the concept is to mine raw rock and then truck it on this haul road all the way to Fairbanks, and then truck it down the Alaska Highway, and then get it all the way to the coast, and then put it on ships and take it to China for milling. So that's the idea. And, the degree of self-dealing and corruption in this administration has been a little hard to keep track of, I admit, but this one really got my attention, because one of the things that happened early on when Trump brought out this plan was he invested your money, my money, public money, in buying a 10% stock in this project with Trilogy Metals, which belongs to one of his biggest supporters. So even Lisa Murkowski, the senator who really loves industrial development in Alaska, when she heard that, she said, "We're in uncharted territory." Here's what I think about. You're the Corps of Engineers, and they bring you the permits to review, and the US government is a part owner of the project. We really have not seen anything like this before. So we decided, let's go see it. Let's get out. Let's meet the people who are going to be most affected by this and see the landscape. So back in the tiny plane, that's Amy in the blue jacket. That's me wearing every single jacket I could find. And I actually rented the gear for this, because what would be the point of buying minus 35 rated boots for Seattle? So our first stop was Fairbanks at the rental office. And here's this pile. It's like a Volkswagen, this pile of stuff that I'm going to be taking with me just in order to not freeze. So Amy and I were both struck by the same thing as we're up in the plane getting to our first stop. Look at the shapes that nature makes. These beautiful soft curves of these perfect, never dammed, never wrecked rivers. The beautiful mountains, also these soft mounded shapes. This is what nature makes. This is what we make. So that's the pipeline, the famous pipeline from Prudhoe Bay, and the Alaska Highway. And we were just really struck by these straight engineered shapes that now many of the people in the Trump administration and their cronies want to bring to the Arctic, make a lot more of it look like this. So Amy kept taking the window off the plane, because, like any great photographer, she wants to shoot. And I'm in the back with, my coat like this. But it was worth it because look what she got. This is the Alatna River looking north to the Brooks Range. The idea is to put this haul road east-west, so you're cutting across these drainages, 4,000 stream crossings in the headwaters of some of the most magnificent salmon rivers in North America. You say a picture says 1,000 words. Her images certainly do that. You see the lake there at the top of the slide. That's where we were headed. This is Lake Inukuk. And it is an absolutely perfect, pristine mountain setting. And we went there to be with John Advocacy. So he's a small business owner, second-generation family business. He operates a remote wilderness fly-in lodge. And so this haul road is planned to go within 8 miles of this property. And suddenly this place, this remote and perfect place, would be in sight and in hearing of an industrial haul road. And you can see it's a sweet, simple place, this beautiful cabin. This is my room, and that's not a painting. That's the view out the window at this beautiful lake. And we spent the first night just planning the next day, looking at maps, talking about it. Look at the beautiful beams peeled by his parents, that incredible center post, which his father collected off a beach. Such a sense of family history and pride in this place, in this business. There's Amy getting her shot list together for the next day. And then this is what the next day brought. Minus 24 with a ground blizzard. So get ready. All that stuff I rented in Fairbanks, I put it all on, every single thing. It was so cold that John wanted to show us that if you take a cup of hot water in extremely cold weather, it sublimates instantly if you throw it. Just so you know. You should have heard our feet on the snow, this incredibly loud squeaking with really dry, cold snow. But eventually it warmed up a little bit, and so it was time to go do what we'd come there to do, which was go look at the proposed alignment for this road, and the way to do it was by dog sled. Now, when I heard about this back in Seattle, I said, oh, no, we're not going to do that. You're going to have to think of something else. Well, there isn't anything else, so suddenly here I am mushing a dog team. But they were very smart. They gave me only 3 dogs, which was a really good idea. Here's Jonah, the master musher. They love to run. Look at the tongues. See them wrapping around their faces? They're so excited. They go very fast. You have this sort of brake you use with your foot to just slow them down. They take really good care of you. They don't take advantage of you. They can tell you don't know what you're doing. And I can't resist showing you this. They say people look like their dogs. Well, what do you think? That's John with his family pet. And this happened every night. The dark night skies, the fantastic northern lights. Amy never slept. She got up every night to get these fantastic pictures. You stand under a sky like that and you feel yourself connected to something bigger and older than you, the cosmos. This is a precious experience. That's the shower house. That's the cabin. And, this kind of experience, what would it be like if you saw headlights? What would it be like if you heard trucks on the haul road? So that was our first stop. Next, we were on to Evansville. This time, we were headed to one of the smallest villages in Alaska. And we were with one of the smallest native villages in Alaska. And this is Dirk, our fantastic pilot, and Amy chatting, having a great ride. And I'm in the back thinking, I wonder if this is going to be okay, because the plane is going like this. And Dirk turns around, and he looks at me and he says, oh, as long as the wings are horizontal, it's fine. Okay, well, they seemed like they were having a great convo, so I figured it was going to be all right. Why did we go to Evansville? Because of the ice road. So I was fascinated to meet the people in Evansville because This is their only connection to the outside world that's a road. They also have an airstrip. But if you want to get something from Fairbanks, like, say, a load of gravel for the town, the only way you're going to get that is in winter, and you're going to get it with an ice road that you build. And you do that by pushing snow into the river drainages and then smoothing the whole thing out, and it has to be constantly maintained. It's a lot of work. It's only there for a couple of months. And I thought, that's really interesting. Here we are in this buy with one click moment in a culture where it's all about convenience. And these people really want to live in a roadless community. They don't want the Ambler Road. They don't want to be connected to a highway. They want the ice road. They love living in remote wilderness Alaska above the Arctic Circle. And so how do you take care of an ice road? Well, I got to meet Alan Manns, the ice road master, and there he is with his high-tech equipment. So it was his job for really 20 years to maintain the ice road. He goes out every morning and he checks it for soft spots. And if he finds one, the big question is, well, will it just freeze hard tonight? No problem. Or do I need to get out and peanut butter on some more snow with the bulldozer? Obviously his favorite part. And it was really interesting to talk to some of the tribal council members. They were really sweet to us. They let us sleep at the tribal council chambers because there was nowhere to stay. And talking to someone like Naomi, she talked about what it means to live in a remote village above the Arctic Circle like this without a road. The closeness of the community, the quiet, the chosen solitude, how special that was. I was really eager to meet Tommy Shanahan, second chief for the village. So he is an ice road trucker. And he said, sure, you can hop in with me. I'll show you what the ice road is like, and I'll tell you why I don't want the Ambler Road. So we met up with him one early morning when he was coming back from Fairbanks. So he's just now coming off the highway, getting ready to get out and chain up for the ice road. Check out the chains. Check out the chains. Those cleats are about an inch long. It was very interesting to talk to Tommy because he, for many years, all of his career, was a trucker, an 18-wheeler trucker, on the Alaska Highway. So don't tell him there aren't going to be rollovers. Don't tell him there won't be spills. Don't tell him there won't be any poaching. Don't tell him, oh, don't worry, we're just going to let industry use it. We won't open it up to the public. All those promises were made about the Alaska Highway. Every one of them was broken. And they're going to have to let anybody and everybody use this road if they ever build it because they're using your money to build it, public money. So it was very interesting to hear him tell the truth about what's going to happen if this thing ever happens. And that is, he'll suddenly hear trucks from his bedroom. And this place, as they know it and love it, their whole way of life will be destroyed. So the only road they ever want is an ice road. I love this portrait that Amy took of him. She's so good at capturing the essence of place and people. So Evansville First Chief Frank Thompson, when we met him, he had just finished giving a major speech at the Tanana Chiefs Conference, which is a regional conference of Native villages where he was so proud that all of the villages in their community stood up against the Ambler Road. And today there are 88 Native villages and counting who are opposed to this project. So we also took a little time just to enjoy where we are. Here we are above the Arctic Circle. I was fascinated with the beauty of the ice crystals that formed in the extreme cold. The poetry of what happened every night when the animals would come out and you get to see their tracks in the morning, such as the wing beats of this ptarmigan lifting up from the snow. We also got really silly. There was a business that set out these snow letters for people to play with. So while we were waiting for our plane to go to our next stop, of course we had to do this. But then the plane came, and it was time to go to our next stop, our third stop, which is the native village of Huslia, another remote place, another roadless place. You get around by snowmobile in Huslia, And we stayed here in what's called politely a dry cabin. That is to say, no running water. There was an outhouse and there was heat, which is what I really cared about. When we first got to Fairbanks, before we started all of our trips, the first thing we did was go to Fred Meyer to get our food, because we're going to have to feed ourselves. We also bought a thermometer, and it was our pet. It was our mascot. We took it everywhere. And I set it up by that front door and kept track of just how cold it was. Amy really got into snowmobiling. I was impressed. Why were we there? We went to be with Rico DeWild. So he's an Athabascan subsistence hunter. And we felt it was really impressive that in this day and age, he had carried on the immense skill and discipline that he learned as a child growing up in the bush, in a truly remote place, absolutely away from people. And as an adult, he now continues these traditions of trapping. And he does this for two reasons: to feed his family and also to get pelts to sell for scarce cash. And so he agreed to let us go with him when he was going to go out by snowmobile and check his trap lines, 50 miles of trap lines in very remote areas. And he was interested in trapping wolves. And the reason for that was he wanted to sell the pelts, and also because he wanted to suppress the wolf population, because he and many others in the village really value moose. It's a really important food source for them. I ate a lot of moose in Huslia. It was delicious. He's also trapping wolverine. Now, I'll tell you the truth, I was kind of hoping he would not catch a wolverine while I was there. I love wolverines. But indeed, he did catch a wolverine. And that's his 11-year-old nephew, who, by the way, is the person who drove my snow machine. I don't think I've ever told my husband that. Here it is, Big Chief. Now, for those of us who don't do this, it's off-putting for sure. Here's this animal, its tongue is frozen white. But for Rico, this is a $1,500 pelt, or potentially it is a gift to Potlatch. He had not yet decided if he was going to gift it or if he was going to sell the skin, but he was going to ceremonially take care of this animal to honor its life. Once he got it back to the village, the first thing he would do, as soon as he could work with it, would be to take care of it, to ceremonially feed it, to give it a chunk of moose fat, put it in its mouth, to take the skin and then burn the carcass, to send it to the other side. Everywhere we went, people were wearing fur clothing that they had either made or was gifted to them or potlatched. It's the thing to wear. And these beautifully crafted, native-made pieces from the land, from the people who still know how to live from the land, that really touched our hearts. Our next stop and the last stop was Fairbanks, and we crossed the mighty Yukon River to do that. This is one of the mightiest rivers in North America, and again, this incredible landscape just unspooling for miles, unspoiled all around us. We went there because we wanted to see Jasmine Bent. So she's 25 years old. She's the young lady in the middle of the photo. And, you know, she grew up with this fight over the Ambler Road because it started in the first Trump administration. Then the Biden administration, after a very hard-fought battle, made it go away, and now it's back. And she said to us, you know, I don't really want to be doing this. I don't want to be flying to D.C. and talking to committees, and I don't want to be going to meetings and fighting this thing, but I feel a responsibility to my culture, to my people, and to these two young people for whom she has guardianship, that they must have a future. It's so important to understand that this is not an environmental issue for Native people. This is a matter of food. It is a matter of cultural survival. These villages are already under so much stress. The mighty Yukon River, they have not been able to fish in the Yukon for more than 5 years. There's been no fishing for Chinook because the populations are so depressed. Why is that? Because of climate change, which is changing the whole food web in the ocean. For Native people to not be able to fish in their river disrupts these ancient patterns and lifeways and seasonal rounds. There's no getting ready for fish camp. You're not with the aunties getting the gear ready. The young men are not with their fathers getting the boat ready. There's no fish camp. There's no cutting up of fish. There's no time in the smokehouse where the stories get told. It's so deeply damaging to these communities to not be able to live their subsistence ways, which is why this Ambler Road is not an environmental issue, it's an existential threat. The animals are also suffering. So polar bears, as you may know, spend most of their life on the sea ice, searching out the seals that they eat when they come up to breathe. Vast migrations, long travels on solid sea ice. But now, with climate warming, the ice is rotten. They fall through. It is an immense struggle for them to get back up. These are big animals. The ice keeps breaking. They keep falling in. And so what are they doing? They're coming ashore. They're suddenly being seen on shore raiding the butchered carcasses of bowhead whales taken by the Inupiaq whalers. This is very dangerous for the whalers, and they're not used to seeing these animals in town. They're not supposed to be here. This is not what they've ever done. It's not how they've ever been. They've even been seen in towns in the garbage dumps. And so what does this tell us? This tells us about life out of balance. And it's because of us pushing into their space with fossil fuel development, seeing bizarre and sick things like a polar bear cub playing with a piece of plastic from a man camp. Terrible things like this mass caribou kill caused when instead of snow, we're getting rain in the Arctic in winter. It freezes in a thick glaze of ice over the tundra, the plants that these animals need to eat in winter. And so they starve. Mass caribou kills because of the changing climate. This is the worst invasion of all, our carbon pollution that we're pushing into the atmosphere, burning fossil fuels. This is the so-called Keeling curve, named for the man who first invented this atmospheric science and method of measurement. Notice the level in the Industrial Revolution. Look at it today. More than 400 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere and still climbing. And what are we doing? What are we doing? Going backward on all of the things that we were trying to do to try to restrain this fossil fuel development, this ever-increasing threat of global warming, which is why I'm going next to the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge with photographer Paul Bannock. Beautiful photographer. He just published a wonderful book about woodpeckers. And, you know, Paul is a very gracious and humble photographer. I've worked with him in the field before, and I can't wait to go with him to the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. We're going to fly to Sunset Pass, which is at the far end of the Brooks Range, and be there during the peak bird migration. So to remind you, that's on the eastern side of the slide. We're going to be on the coastal plain, which is this precious place that's been fought over now for 40 years. Industry wanting to do fossil fuel development, but because, honestly, of the effectiveness of your advocacy and also the Native people, this is a place where drilling is very unpopular. And here's why. So the Gwich'in people call this the sacred place where life begins. This is the home of the porcupine caribou herd, and this caribou herd is incredibly important to the Gwich'in people. It is not only a source of their food, and also the skins for everything from ceremonial drums to clothing, but it is at the heart of their creation story. They believe, they know that they come from this animal. This is a vast birth house for species, a vast nursery for animals. Muskox, an incredible ice age animal that persists at the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, the largest in the country. and still completely intact. Animals like this need big territory. The birds, once again, this is a place where birds come to breed, and no matter where they're going, this is where they're from. This place is where so many animals start their lives, and they must have this precious place in which they can persist. This is the most important place for polar bears in the Arctic. There is a more dense concentration of polar bears on the Arctic coastal plain than anywhere else. And you saw the trouble with the sea ice. These animals need these coastal areas now more than ever. And to see them living as they do in this place, these noble animals, this is a fantastic photo by Steve Kozlowski, who's here tonight, an incredible photographer of polar bears. You know, you look into that face and you look at their noble stride and you must say to yourself, they have a right to exist. So I think that the thing I mostly want to leave you with is this. This is both good news and your charge. There was also a lease sale that just happened a couple weeks ago in the refuge. And you know what? Nobody came. Nobody came. And even better, it's the third time that nobody showed up. None of the major oil companies. So it was just participation by one little sort of wildcat firm. And get this. Did you hear this? The only other bidder was a state agency from Alaska, the Economic Development Agency. They actually spent $190 million of state taxpayer money just to show up. Not only that, but what they want to do next is seismic testing. So this is the very next battle, and it is happening absolutely right here and right now. Seismic testing. You can't read this, but I'll tell you the highlighted parts. What they tell you is that seismic testing, according to scientists from the University of Alaska Fairbanks, will cause lasting damage to the tundra. Why? This is why. These are 90,000-pound thumper trucks that push deep seismic waves into the fragile tundra, and they leave it permanently scarred. Suddenly, this wild place, the sacred place where life begins, will get an industrial grid. Not only that, but these vibrations crush polar bear dens. So, see that face? That's a polar bear about to charge. That's you. I want you to hold this place in your heart. I want you to understand this is public land. It belongs to you, and it's up to you. So now I want to bring Helen back up to the stage, and she's going to talk to you about what you can do. Thank you.
The green? Oh, okay, great. I am just going to tee this up a little bit and be joined with Lynda for Q&A, and also from my colleague at the Campion Advocacy Fund, Lily Wang, who can answer some very specific questions about what's going on and what we can do in this moment. I imagine that there are a lot of Alaska activists in the crowd tonight. Could you raise your hand if you've been involved with this work or taken any kind of public action on behalf of the Arctic Refuge or Alaska? I really would like to just provide a little bit of a foundation about what you can do and why it matters. In these times, the work that we do in community is so important. We don't do this in isolation. I would also invite you to think about the decades before now, where people have been working to protect these public lands. The indigenous people, the Gwich'in people, who, as a unified tribe, have over and over again reaffirmed that there will be no drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, the coastal plain. I'd invite you to just think about all of the work and all of the courage of the people that came before us, and to commit to continuing that work in these very challenging and perilous times. The work that we're doing is, just in this one case, the Protect the Arctic campaign. If I were to put a list of all of the organizations and resources that are available, it would fill this slide with very small print. But in the work that we're doing with Protect the Arctic, if you want to come to our website, you can learn more about the different people that are working on this, different natural histories, the history, and we always have a current Take Action page. And if you use the QR code, you can get to that page. We have a film, The Arctic, Our Last Great Wilderness. It's an IMAX film. It was shown several years ago at the Pacific Science Center. But we'd like to make screenings of that film available to organizations and classrooms and libraries, and to just show people how incredibly important and precious the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge is. So with that, I'd like to get Lynda back up to answer questions, and my colleague Lily Wang to join as well, and she will be able to talk about some very current things that you can get involved with. And I know that there were some questions. You can come up to the microphone here to ask your questions, and I think that we had some online already that you're going to tee up for us. Eliza, do you want to tee some up the questions up for us? And then anyone who wants to ask a question, you can just come on over to the microphone.
Yeah, currently we don't have any online, but if you do have a question in the audience, you're welcome to come up or raise your hand if walking up to this mic isn't accessible to you, and I can say it louder for everyone.
One of the questions that I had just in the audience before we came up was, what's going on now, and is there any kind of a public comment period going on that I can contribute to? And I think that Lily might be able to give some context to that. It's a moving target, I tell you. And a lot of the open public comment periods of the past that gave sufficient time and where people actually reflected on the nature of those public comments, those days are kind of not with us anymore. So it's important for us to be on top of it and to be vigilant.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you, Lynda. There is currently a public comment period open for a rulemaking petition, which is basically when the federal government puts out regulations in the Western Arctic, where Lynda had the privilege to go last year. And it would essentially allow the government to rubber stamp and approve any oil and gas projects in the future in the Western Arctic or the National Petroleum Reserve, Alaska. It would require the government to automatically rubber stamp things within 60 days, and they wouldn't be able to, litigate or overturn those decisions unless fraud could be proven, and fraud is certainly, a broadly defined term under this administration. That rulemaking petition was submitted by an entity called the Alaska Oil and Gas Association. The current senior advisor for Alaska Affairs under the Trump administration used to be the CEO of that entity, so we can only assume what kind of things are happening behind closed doors there. That public comment period is running for another week or so, so certainly would encourage you all to check out the QR code for protectthearctic.org, learn a little bit more about this issue, but it is going to set an incredibly tricky precedent to kind of overturn in the MPRA for future administrations as well. So certainly encourage you all to check out the link, learn more, and share your perspective on on that issue.
And I could just add that we have our friends at the Alaska Wilderness League tabling, and they also have very good, robust information on what you can do.
First, thank you for the stunning presentation. Have any of you or the organizations that you work with gone to speak to senators, representatives? It just, in Alaska and Washington, even our senators, who are very powerful actually, you know, just to get them. I mean, I'm assuming you are, but it would be good to just talk about it. Thank you.
I will say here in Washington State, we have the pleasure of being represented by Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell, who are both incredible champions for both the Western Arctic and the Arctic Refuge. Senator Cantwell herself has had the opportunity to go up to the Arctic Refuge as well, and they have been incredible allies in the congressional process. Senator Murray, you know, with her her role in the Appropriations Committee has just been you know, astonishing in the way that she is able to help us, you know, knock out bad provisions, get funding, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, Senator Cantwell always lends her voice to this, this incredible issue. Certainly, you know, on the federal political level, you know, great organizations like the Alaska Wilderness League, along with a lot of large environmental groups, you know, will lobby, will advocate. But there's nothing quite like hearing from the people that they represent, their constituents, right? Like, so certainly encourage you all to, again, use your voice, let your members of Congress, both in the Senate and the House, know what this means to you, what this means to all of us. I mean, what happens in America's Arctic really does impact every single one of us, even though it might feel so far away. So, yeah.
Yes, and I've been walking the halls of Congress. In fact, with Steve Kozlowski, the photographer that was just mentioned, he and I did that together, and it was a very empowering experience to walk into office of a member of the Senate or the House, to talk with a senator or a representative or their staffs, and to go on record. And it really shows that what democracy is about. It's also important to send letters to our representatives to let them know that this is an important issue. It does make a difference. And I know I had never done anything like that before, and it was kind of a pivotal moment for me just to realize that, you know, these are public servants and our voices do count.
Also, there's an election coming up in Alaska that's very important.
Yeah, someone just mentioned that there's an election in Alaska that's coming up that's very important.
Thank you so much. I was in Arctic National Wildlife Refuge on the Conga many years ago, so these developments are all so heartbreaking. What I don't understand the seismic testing. Can you explain? I mean, is that leading to more leases? I don't really know anything about it, so thank you very much for your work.
Yeah, so seismic testing is a step that oil and gas companies take to either kind of figure out what is under the ground under their current leases, or kind of as prospecting, right, where they might go next. So it's kind of twofold, right? So you can have companies, I know Lynda mentioned the Alaska Development Corporation, it's called ADA, the Alaska Industrial Development and Export Authority. ADA has set aside $150 million plus to kind of do seismic on their leases. They are currently the kind of major leaseholder in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, and it is kind of the first step towards development, right? It's you're locating those pockets of oil and gas, figuring out kind of where to hone in and where you want to drill, either on your existing leases or to, again, kind of discover new places and figure out where you want to bid next. And it is, I think, the most important thing to know about seismic. It is the first on-the-ground impacts. A lease is just a lease. It is your right to kind of develop, but seismic is the first time you will see scars across the landscape, and it is, as someone who has seen them, incredibly jarring, right? To be in this beautiful, vast wilderness and you fly over and you just see this crazy checkerboard of these grid lines. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Do you need help with this?
No.
You don't want it? What's your question? on, it's okay. Do you know her question?
I have my own.
You have your own.
Hi, I just want to say that the presentation was beautiful and really showcased all the beauty of the Arctic and Alaska. But for my question, I want to ask, what are the costs, both financial and otherwise, of maintaining and forwarding this conservation and preservation movement?
What is the cost of maintaining the?
Of basically maintaining the environmental aspects and like preventing the ice road from being taken over and yeah, the resistance. What's the cost of resisting these?
You want to try that? Yeah. I think what you are asking is a fairly complicated question.
Sorry.
You're talking about what the cost is to not develop. Is that correct?
Yes and no. I mean, like of expanding the movement.
I think it is still a tricky question, but I'm going to try to tackle it and would encourage Lynda and Helen to jump in. I mean, certainly millions of dollars, right, go into these environmental groups to staff them with policy experts, with scientists who research the impact of things like ice roads on caribou migration. That all takes dollars, right? Those are people's day jobs. But at the end of the day, I think ultimately the cost is almost like personal, right? Like it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of weight. It's not always super happy, right, and uplifting. It's, you know, there are a lot of wins, but there are a lot of losses, and keeping that energy up and that momentum up, I think is truly what's the most important. I mean, I think the financial cost of kind of keeping up, right, an environmental movement to defend our public lands, to defend these places that matter to us, to other communities, to our friends and neighbors, is frankly a drop in the bucket to what, you know, what the return is. I mean, you cannot put a price on an experience. Can you put a price on the Grand Canyon? Can you put a price on Yosemite or Yellowstone? I've been to all those places, and let me tell you, the refuge and the Western Arctic are like Yosemite times a million. It is incredible. You think about the elk migrations right in Wyoming and Montana. Picture that times 10. That's what the porcupine caribou herd looks like. It's irreplaceable. So I think it's hard to put really like a return on investment, right, on advocacy, because this is it. This is our last great wilderness. There is nothing like it left. So.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question, or did you want?
Yes, that did. Thank you.
When you were going on your journey around the Arctic, did you run into any aggressive animals?
So the question was, in my journey in the Arctic, did I run into any aggressive animals? And the answer to that is only my appetite. My appetite for more Arctic. No, the animals that we saw were either at a distance or just doing their thing, probably wishing that they could keep doing their thing.
Thank you for that powerful presentation. The words and the photos made for such powerful storytelling, but you also expressed that it was difficult and hard to get to these places to tell the stories. Can you speak to what it's like to do this kind of ambitious journalism in an area of shrinking newsrooms and shrinking news budgets?
I appreciate that question. So honestly, this would not be happening but for the Braided River Alaska Journalism Fund. So and I'm so grateful for that support, and it isn't just me. I mean, it's also support for the photographers, and this is a whole community of writers and photographers that Helen has lifted up with this Alaska Journalism Fund. So, you know, I'm sure she'd be open to donations. Am I allowed to say that?
I think that's why it's so important, because you'd mentioned the diminishing newsrooms and budgets, and these stories are so important to be told. They are so difficult to be told in the way that the reporting needs to be done, which is on the ground, in person, talking to the people on the land. So we're really grateful that we have an intrepid Lynda Mapes who's willing to go out at minus 24-degree weather to do the storytelling.
Great. And all of those questions up at the mic covered what was received electronically. So we're going to round out the Q&A. Yes. I've got a hand over here. Oh, I'm sorry. I did not see it.
How do we support Braided River?
Well, thank you. We're a nonprofit, and you can go to braidedriver.org, and you can find out more about our work and contribute to our support. We have a table with some brochures if you want to take them with you, and we would welcome it. The power of community working together, doing everything that we can in the various ways that we can do it, is what's going to end up helping to protect these wild places. So I really thank you for that. I think we're going to do book sales and signing books now. Is that right? Yes. Okay. Thank you all again for being a part of this evening.